think. you, sir. Appreciate y'all's patience. It
This
was
is pretty fast.
a couple of rock stars on the team, able to pull it together.
Yep. Got it. Where am I? Next check.
We're going to call to order the meeting. The workshop agenda for Tuesday, May 16th, 2023. Please rise for the invocation and pledge. Thank you.
O merciful Creator, your hand is open wide to satisfy the needs of every living creature. Make us thankful for your loving providence and grant that we, remembering the account that we must one day give, may be faithful stewards of your good gifts. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think we should say budget workshops, jeans are okay. Workshop, jeans are okay.
Please call the roll.
I said Oakley comes in jeans, I'm coming in jeans.
District 1, Commissioner Ron Oakley.
Here.
District 2, Commissioner Seth Waitman.
Here.
District 3, Commissioner Catherine Starkey.
Here?
District 4, Commissioner Gary Bradford.
Excused.
District 5, Chairman Jack Mariano.
Here. All right, so topic of discussion 1, 2024 budget status. Mr. Carbella.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Today we are here as kind of the early part of the budgeting process to get input via budget workshop. And so Bob Gorig here will kind of review with you a little bit on the budget timetable, just a review of what Save Our Homes is about. Talk to you then with some assumptions that we have put in this first run at the budget, some scenarios, and then kind of follow it up with the actual budget numbers. And then we'll be looking for your input on what we've presented here, as well as just a number of other things to understand your priorities, so that way we can fully put forth the budget and do great things in 2024. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Gorig.
Thank you. So before we dive into the numbers, we just wanted to review with you the budget timetable. So we are expecting the preliminary taxable assessed values from the property appraiser on June 1st. And on July 1st, we will receive the final taxable assessed values. Keep in mind that those assessed values can change between the June 1 preliminary and the July numbers. So we will set the trim, or the board will set the trim on July 11th. As part of Florida law, the property appraiser notifies all property owners of the proposed millage rates through a mailing known as the Truth and Millage mailing in August. And so
We can hear you.
Good. So the board must adopt a millages for the various funds prior to that mailing, keeping in mind that the millage that you set in July can be lower than the final millages that you adopt in September, but they cannot be higher. So we wanted to review with you and our residents at home the Save Our Homes Amendment to the Florida Constitution. Under the Florida Save Our Homes, the taxable assessed value of a property can increase by 3%, or the change of inflation, whichever is less. The change in inflation that will be used for this year's calculation is 6.5%. Therefore, the taxable assessed value of homesteaded properties cannot increase by more than 3%. Non-homesteaded properties, there is a cap of 10% increase on non-homesteaded properties, and we've really only achieved that level of taxable assessed value increase in the past 2 years. So an example of this, for a typical single-family home of $150,000, for a homesteaded property, the taxable value would increase $3,000. That would be 3% of $100,000. So it would be $150,000 would be the taxable assessed value of your home. It is homesteaded, so we subtract the $50,000 standard exemptions for $100,000 taxable value. So at that rate, the homesteaded property owner would pay an increase of $22.82 in additional property taxes, not because the tax rate has changed, but because the value of the property has increased. Non-homesteaded property owners, on the other hand, last year, $150,000 increase. There are no standard exemptions. Therefore, the taxable assessed value of that property is $150,000. And that property owner's taxable property taxes would increase by $114.11. So we wanted to look over the Save Our Homes cap since 2010. You can see, since 2010, the Save Our Homes cap of 3% has been reached only 3 times during all of that time. So that's a great benefit to our residents. However, it does limit the amount of revenues that the county can bring in. And regardless of how much the inflation is this year, as we said, the taxable assessed value of the homesteaded properties will only increase by 3%. So when we built the budget that we are presenting to you today, we had these budget assumptions. We are assuming no change in the operating millage of 7.6076 mils. Yes, ma'am.
In these conversations, you talk about houses, but what about commercial property?
Commercial properties would be the same. They would be
But
subject.
you don't, do you talk about it in, it is the same?
It's the same.
3%?
No, homestead, you can't homestead a commercial property.
3%.
Right,
Homestead
so
properties
I
have a
thought it
limit
was
of 10.
10. There's no caps on,
It's a 10% cap for
Okay.
commercial properties.
but do you have any of that information in here?
No, it would be the same calculation as we've just shown. So if a commercial property was valued at $150,000, their property taxes would increase by $114. So it would be the same for commercial as it would be for a single-family home, because they're not subject to the 3% cap.
But they have a cap.
They're capped at 10.
They're capped at
10%
10%.
of it, okay.
Yes.
We never break it out between residential and commercial when we're going through
No.
this, do we?
No, but we can in the future.
I think
if
that
you'd
would be
like.
interesting to
go
know,
to the-
because I think we should be
Go to the-
tracking our commercial values
That one.
as a
We'll have
percentage of
more
total.
come in.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, we have that data.
If their cap is 10, they'd be subject to the CPI change, not the 10%.
Mr. Whitman, thank you. Yeah, to Commissioner Starkey's point, I'd really like to see what we have coming online, what's currently online with commercial. I'd like to see us be able to give the residential a break and not beat up our commercial too bad, because that's just going to be a pass-through to customer and drive inflationary issues. I'd like to see that separately.
Very good. We can break that up for you.
and as we're adding commercial, it reduces the tax burden
Yeah.
on that.
So we like to see, we
Residential.
need to see what the
Yeah.
trend is.
Yeah,
But we can't change, the
No.
rate's gonna be the rate.
right, it's just that we,
Your millage is the same for residential and for commercial.
We don't have to take the 10%.
although, no, that's a state cap.
Yeah.
We don't
It's
have
just
to
that
go
we
to
don't,
that.
it just would be good to see if we're
Let's go
doing a
one
good
by- one
job
at a time, then.
building up the commercial part of our,
And we can dig those up for you. We have those figures.
of our fund.
We track that.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So what I'm hearing is you'd like to see what the increase in rates of commercial assessments and values have been over time,
Yeah.
same with residential, and perhaps even see maybe a pie chart or something
Yeah,
that would
right.
show your distribution as to who's paying what
And the
proportion
values
of
we've
the
created.
overall tax bill, if you will.
I'd like to see what's coming online. Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Chair. I'd
The
like to
others
see.
are working on.
Take
It's
the rubber-
useless.
Take the rubber mallet. Take the rubber mallet. I'd like to see what's coming, what we have coming online too. What we have in the pipeline as far, you can look at the COs and what we have for commercial coming up in '24. And that's pretty telling, what we're forecasting.
Okay.
But it's a different level of detail I'd like to see.
You bet.
But either way, that's
Commissioner Starkey?
That's important information for us to know if we're, really doing a good job bringing the commercial value here.
Mr. Roseman?
Yeah, I agree with you. We need to see both, I think, because a lot of our bills for the county and our employees and all the bills are being paid by a lot of commercial. And we don't want to miss any opportunities in the future for having commercial where it's affecting us. We want that commercial along with the housing, because housing costs more. Commercial pays a lot of the bills, so we need to make sure there's the right kind of balance for the whole county.
Thank you.
I think it's good information too for us to know, to see how we're growing.
Right.
Trying to focus on creating jobs,
Exactly.
et cetera, so that'll kind of give us a good indication where the strength is too.
Yeah.
Got it.
Carry on.
Thank you. So as we said, when we built this preliminary budget for you, these are the assumptions we put into that building of that budget. So no change in the operating millage, as I mentioned, no change in the fire MSTU millage of 1.8036 mils, no change in the stormwater assessment, which is $95 per ERU. Water wastewater rates would be increasing at the rate in the 4-year rate resolution, which is 1.5% for water, 3.5% for sewer. And then we're in the year 5 of our solid waste 7 for 7 plan, where we increase the assessment for solid waste by $7 per year to accumulate the funds needed to add the 4th burner to the waste to energy plant. So we generated a number of taxable assessed value scenarios. We won't know the actual taxable assessed values until June 1st. As we mentioned, we used 8, 12, and 16% for the general fund. So if we just use the 12% in the middle, net increase in property tax, if the taxable assessed values increased by 12%, would be $35.5 million. The allocation to the sheriff's office then would be $14.2 million. The increase in our payments to the CRA is about $700,000. Then we have the TIF, which we use for transportation-related expenditures. That's just about $2.25 million. That would leave $18.38 million for the board and the constitutionals other than the sheriff's office. If we look at the fire MSTU millage, we use a higher scenario rate here because generally the fire MSTU millage taxable assessed values increase quicker than they do for the general fund. So again, if it increases by 14%, we would expect the fire millage or the fire MSTU to receive an additional $9.5 million in revenue.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Stark.
During my meeting with them on my budget meeting, I asked them to break out what would be going to the different cities. And you said Newport Richey was 2.1?
Yes, ma'am.
Dade City is 1.27. Port Richey, 770. This is from the CRA, right?
That's correct, yes.
And Zephyr Hills, I put 300,000, but I think that's 3 million.
It's only 30,000, something like that. They have a very small CRA area, so they
Oh,
don't
that's
collect,
why
yes.
it's so little. So 30,000.
Yes.
Okay. But Newport Richey is still 2.1.
Yes, ma'am. It's the largest.
Okay.
Might be a good time to start a dialogue about what's really blighted in Newport Richey.
Yeah.
So if we look for some of our general fund priorities, these are things that we've built into the preliminary budget. First of all, we have the county Medicaid contribution. The state requires counties to share in the expense of Medicare or Medicaid. We don't have the numbers for this yet. We won't know the true expense until July. And so this is simply an estimate based on prior years' increases. We expect that to increase by $800,000 or so. We have inflation in our health insurance like everyone else does, so we're expecting in the general fund, healthcare expenditures to increase by $750,000. Wiregrass Sports Complex, we have an agreement there to build those fields and maintain those fields out there. Public Safety Administration, as you know, last year we created the Public Safety Administration branch, and so as that branch grows, we have additional expenditures for that. Corrections contracts, there are 4 contracts for the Corrections Department which will be expiring at the end of this fiscal year. We don't know yet what those increases will be. So in this budget, we just estimated that those contracts would increase by 15% or $1.2 million. When the actual contracts come in, of course, we will fund them at the level of which they are, but for now, we don't want to tie up money that we may not need. Yes.
Thank you. So in our contracts that are expiring, how conservative are you estimating the increases to be? I'd much rather be heavier on your estimate.
So let me
Sure.
take this, and that's fair. So the Corrections Department had a very high number. You know, I would say that the numbers were increased by over 80%. You know, we felt that, and again, if we budget to that number, you know, there's an extra $5 million off the table that we're just going to set aside. I think it's probably more sound to see what the number is. Let's see what the market tells us versus tying up those dollars. Because if we tie them down now, then obviously they come in lower at the number that we want, we can reallocate those monies. It really becomes a policy decision on your part. If the board would like us to be ultra conservative on that, that's fine, we can be ultra conservative, but I can tell you that number is probably, 5 times that number at this point in time. And without having any other data to support that, I'm inclined to go with a typical 15 to 20% inflationary number like we've seen in other sectors.
And let me ask, the contracts that have expired, there's no provisions to an extension? that are in
Now,
there?
they're food and healthcare. I don't know, JJ, do you have something you can add?
Yes, sir. We will be extending some of them to include the healthcare contract, just because we're going out for the process of writing a new RFP or invitation to negotiate and all those things. And to Mike's point, we're looking at across the board in corrections, opportunities to save money, where we combine. If we have 4 contracts, 4 different vendors, can one vendor come in and do all 4 of those and get the cost savings? So we're looking at all those opportunities. But yes, we will be extending some of the contracts. As you know, all of the contracts were set on a 1-year contract, all to expire. We're not going to do that. We're going to stagger them. I don't want to go through this process again, and I don't want to go through it in 3 years, right? So
Corporation at this point to do the extension or not?
It sounds like they've cooperated while we go through the RFP process, correct? That takes time. But to the commissioner's point, it just becomes a policy issue. If we tie the numbers up here, then we're basically going to allocate that money and budget for it, which will not leave any additional funds. My preference would be to see what the market really says when the bid goes out, but.
So, for every, all our contracts, I hope that the county is going to our current vendors, they're a good partner, whether it's corrections or elsewhere, and trying to have a conversation to negotiate with them before going through a bid process and seeing, before the sticker shock happens. It's going to happen. I think if we have a good partner with a vendor in the county, it'd behoove us to say, hey, it could be a higher number. I don't know what our procurement rules are as far as what forces a bid, but the conversation is worth having. I hope that the county will do that with our vendors that are good partners.
What forces a bid is generally, if you're talking about your consulting contracts, CCNA, that sort of thing, is the contracts are bid or proposed for a term of years. Usually it's 3 with 2 1-year extensions. When you get to the end of that, it has to go back out again. And then that's what the competitive process is. So you could terminate it at the end of 3 and go out, but you normally will have a period of years that it can be extended. But once you get to the end of that, you can't privately negotiate with that vendor. It's back out into the open market.
Well, that's where's the benefit to the taxpayer? We're at 40% inflationary highs. And if we can get we should be able to have the flexibility to negotiate with a good partner if we can get a good rate for another 12 to 24 months instead of going to bid and seeing 100% cost increase. We're in unprecedented financial times, and I think that we need to have some flexibility to work with our good partners and our vendors versus just saying it's done. There's a good working relationship. They say, oh, we'll take a 15% PI and we're good to go, versus it going to bid, you see an 80% jump. That's just my fault.
And I'm just telling you what the law is. If you're at the end of your contract.
Is that our rules?
Yeah.
Yes, you're
So
covered by that.
if we can change our rules then,
No.
are they county ordinance or is it
I think
state
it's
law?
state.
So some of it is state law and some of it is county ordinance. We can look at your procurement ordinance and see if there are places that we can, quote, liberalize it, but currently, I'm telling you what the county ordinance currently says, and the county ordinance was adopted to implement state law.
Commissioner Oakley?
Yes, when do these renew? Do you know the date they will be renewing? Will it be after we've finalized our budget, or is it going to be
I'll
before?
defer to JJ, but I would assume sometime during fiscal year '24, these contracts
I
will be
believe
up.
I believe they were October 1 contracts,
line with the.
So that's why we have to extend it. We're already in May at this point, and so given the procurement process, we won't
Right.
have numbers until we
You
are
don't wanna
well
go in
into
there
fiscal year
blind,
'24.
blindsided and
Yeah.
save way more than you need. You can move it after that, I guess, but
Well, or, you know, we just, when the number is the number, we'll budget accordingly.
Right.
There was no, I did not have a comfort level at this point in time that the numbers that I was receiving were accurate. And so, based on that, we went ahead and, you know, looked at a percentage. And so, we'll conduct more research, we'll refine that as time goes on to make it a more realistic number for the budget process, sir.
yeah, I agree with that. That sounds like the right thing to do. And I understand the law and the ordinances we have that govern going out to bid. So there's nothing wrong with waiting to go out to bid at the right time, so. Okay.
Thank you. Built into the budget as well, we have recurring capital investments, so this is investments in our facilities, as well as our IT infrastructure, our network, software, that kind of thing.
Are you gonna break that down further? Because that's a big number.
Yes, ma'am, we have $2.5 million is set aside for facilities.
Wait, let me ask my question again.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Stuckey.
are you gonna break that down a little more? Because that's a really big number.
Which line are we talking about,
The
Commissioner?
recurring
Six.
investments.
Yeah.
We have $2.5 million, which is for the
Yes.
facilities, ongoing facilities, kinds of non-capital expenditures.
What does that mean?
That would be things for HVAC repairs, elevator maintenance, painting of facilities, repairing walls, all kinds of things.
Reinvesting in our physical infrastructure.
Is that a pretty constant number every year, 2.5
Yes.
million?
Yeah, it is.
It's probably lower than it needs to be.
Okay.
We should be investing 1 to 2% of our entire plant value annually, and we're at
Fractions of
a
that.
fraction of that.
Okay, and then the other 4.1?
So we have $1.5 million, which we invest in our IT infrastructure for our network, software, that kind of thing.
Okay,
We have $300,000, which we set aside for Parks and Rec to renovate up to 7 athletic fields each year. We have $1 million.
well, does that not coming from the GO bond?
No, ma'am. No, we can't use that GO bond for non-capital
Is
kinds of
this where
things.
our 3.7% of our TIF went?
No, this is coming from the general fund.
Well, didn't that
The TIF, no.
Didn't delta go into the general fund for capital?
Yes.
For some roads, I believe.
It's in that big bag of money, so, I mean, you can certainly make that argument.
Okay, for parks, okay.
Then we have $1 million for Parks and Rec, non-capital kinds of improvements. If they need to repair restrooms or a fence, replace some fields or playgrounds, things like that. So they have $1 million set aside for that. And then the remaining $1.3 million would be set aside for Pine Ridge Park renovations. So we started that renovation this year in '23, and then we'd like to set aside the money required to finish that renovation in '24.
Okay,
So then, everything else, the miscellaneous at the end, increases to fuel, general contracting increases, mowing increases, all those kinds of things make up the remainder of that increase. So additional priorities, which are not baked into the base budget, we have, the state has changed the employee retirement system.
yeah,
Those changes will come out to be about $2.9 million in the general fund. A wage increase of 5% is $7.7 million. The additional funding.
It's also the IAFF
Oh, that's,
portion.
yes, thank you. That includes the expected increases to the IAFF contract, firefighter contract. The monies needed to finish the jail expansion, $8 million. To finally complete the comprehensive plan, we would need $110,000 to do that. Opening fire stations 2 and 4 for just the last quarter of the fiscal year. And then finally, we've kind of made an agreement with the sheriff to potentially add 10 additional deputies at $1.9 million. So additional fire rescue priorities that we're considering, of course, the first is the wage increase, which we've discussed. Adopting a 3-week Kelly Day, so going from a 6-week to a 3-week Kelly Day. Looking at refurbishing a rescue unit. It's very difficult now to buy ambulances or vehicles, and so we take one of our older ambulances out and renovate that. Adding Rescue 213 and then adopting some sort of mental health program for first responders. So this would be, what you see here on the screen is mental health for the firefighters. We're also looking at a similar program for our corrections officers. So changes in major funds, as you see, we talked about the general fund already, so we talked about the municipal services fund. Municipal services fund supports the 911 center, which is a separate fund, and because of the reduction in revenues to that fund, we need to transfer additional monies from the municipal services fund to the 911 fund. Building inspections, we see that decreasing in '23. We had some one-time building renovation costs, which will not be in the budget for '24. And the County Transportation Trust Fund, we're expecting increases in fuel costs as well as increases in the cost of concrete.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Starkey.
On the building, I'm guessing a lot of that was to move into the new building?
Citizens Center, so right now it's
Is that what we're calling that building?
yes, ma'am. So that is the renovations that are occurring in that building.
So are we going to knock down that old nasty jail?
Good question.
And are there any funds in here to do that? Or are we waiting?
Answer to question one is yes, and not at this, the budget's not finalized, but yes, it's one of my priorities is to put money in there so we can knock that jail down.
Okay.
So we have the Tourism Development Tax Fund. So as you remember, the board increased the tourism development tax, the hotel tax, from 4% to 5%. The tourism, or DMO, plans on using that additional money to bring in additional for marketing and branding. Yes?
Commissioner Waitman.
Thank you, Chair. So the hotel tax, what's the breaking point on that tax that if a hotel were to decide to come here, what's the rate that the hoteliers say, it's not worth doing business in Pasco? Do we have any idea what that?
Yeah,
Less than the other counties.
Right, but
yeah, we are less, but I don't think that that tax is paid by the folks who stay in the hotels, not by the hoteliers.
Passed
so-
on directly, so it's passed on to the
Therefore,
consumer. So there's probably other macro factors that would affect that decision.
Now, the increase we put in place just got us up to what some of the other counties are. Pinellas is probably higher, Tampa's higher. Anyone with a convention center or a sports team or something is a bit higher. You can travel elsewhere around the country, and you can sometimes they put an extra 7% on it or something.
Yeah.
So,
my concern with it was to not, price ourselves out of the market and not have a hotelier want to come in.
Yeah.
I haven't
Bill.
seen that.
Just,
At the rate we're at, we're not pricing ourselves out because we have counties near us that actually have a higher tax,
And they're getting
and they're getting plenty.
subsidies, which, I tried to cut.
It underscores the importance of your tourism program that will generate heads and beds. Yeah.
thank you.
So we look at the fire fund, the increase of about almost 10% there. That's due to increases in the cost of equipment, cost of fuel, other fleet-related costs, as well as the wage increase built into there. Stormwater fund, you see that decreased by 5%. We had some one-time expenditures in '23, including the stormwater master plan. Those things are no longer in '24 budget, so we see the decline. The wastewater fund, the water wastewater fund increased by 2% simply because we're drawing more water, and so the bill for Tampa Bay Water increases. And then finally, solid waste fund, a 4% increase, and that's primarily due to the managed contracts with Covanta.
and if I could just go back to the stormwater fund for a minute.
Yes, sir.
We put that in place years ago with a smaller number, just to kind of like study what we had to go do. I think in the past several years, we have tremendous improvements, great partnerships with SwiftMud. With SwiftMud now shifting gears about putting money into water sources. I think maybe the following year, seeing what they actually end up doing, maybe time to take a look at that again to get these projects done. We've still got a few more projects to do, and I think there's going to be a decrease in the taxes for SwiftMud tax, but if we don't have the matching funds to get these projects done, it's going to put us in a bad spot. And we've got several projects we've got funded already had an agreement, but the costs that came in were higher. And now we've got to take more money from that, so it'll be.
I think you can be proud of your stormwater fund. That assessment was originally meant to be raised, but the team has done a phenomenal job of working within those boundaries and getting those projects done. And of course, the CFI process was important. Know that with the stormwater master plan and all the maintenance that we're doing, we'll be able to come back to the board with a comprehensive plan, and perhaps even my objective would be to look at that plan and perhaps if we did seek an increase in it or to bond a portion of those revenues to really make a lot of headway and progress. But that'll probably be in about 1.5 years or 2 years before we do that.
No, and I'll say, I think we've done a great job. Branford and now his team come behind him, have done a good job doing a lot of internal things.
Yes.
Developing the team that can actually do the work, which saves a whole bunch of money.
Yeah.
Mr. Starkey?
You know, when I was on the PA Basin Board of Swift Mud, and we didn't have a stormwater fund, we could not participate in the cooperative funding programs that our citizens were paying into. And we had a $25 million budget at the PA Basin Board, and maybe $250,000 was coming back to Pasco County. It was so frustrating to watch, but we did not have any means to pay our 50% share, so. So does this have cushion in there to, I mean, this is the pot that we use still with Swift Mud for cooperative funding?
So for the stormwater portion, I mean, utilities does do some projects as well. I mean, our reclaim system is pretty robust because of our partnership with Swift Mud. But the stormwater fund there, that funds both stormwater operations, so a lot of the maintenance items that the chairman was referring to, as well as capital. And it's been kind of working as a pay-as-you-go type fund at this point.
Okay, I just don't ever want to be in that position again.
All right, so we do fund a number of outside programs. Some of these are required by the state, others have been set aside by the board. So of course, Medicaid, we are an increase of about $880,000. The others you can see there are no increases to those. As we see now, we see the museum, we're supporting 2 museums, the Pioneer Museum as well as the West Pasco Historical Society. We are part of the Human Trafficking Coalition, and so that's the money we put into that. And we donate $250,000 per year to United Way, and that $250,000 has been the same amount of money since at least I've been here.
Mr. Starkey?
I do feel we need to bump that up a little bit. I mean, it's never increased, but it should be a little higher. I don't know what the number is, but,
The next page are coming up.
oh, okay.
You read my mind.
Oh, there it is.
So you see the Pasco Kids, they're asking for an additional almost $20,000. Pasco Kids conducts assessments and health screenings for children who are suspected of being victims of child abuse. United Way emergency sheltering, so if we have some cold weather snaps or something, we can get folks off the streets and get them someplace warm. The United Way outside agency funding, and so this is their request of increasing that $250,000 to by $65,000. They've also requested $25,000 for the 211 center, which is a call center where they would give resources to those who call in. And then this emergency assistance funding of $25,000 in which they would help low-income folks pay their heating bills and things like that.
Mr. Starkey?
On that 211, which I'm in support of it, but someone told me that goes to like Orlando. Someone from Orlando is answering the phone. So I do want to dive into that program and just hear if we're going to give them more money, who's running it, and, you know, how successful is it for our citizens? We should do a secret shopping.
I do think we should look at that one too, but let's look at the other ones as well. So the Pasco Kids first. I mean, you certainly don't want to run out of money for that program if you
No.
need it. The next one, the sheltering, takes a lot of stress off staff. A lot of bureaucracy kind of goes away. If they need to go put someone on quick, they can do it.
Yeah.
The funding, you know, way back when we used to have battles as far as who's going to get which money, they kind of separate it now. And when the economy dropped, they were going to look at cutting some of that funding. And I was pushing at that time to go forward, and the boards, since that point in time as well, have said, no, we need to keep that money in there to help. And I think they've done a good job with it. So I don't think it's unreasonable to go far that ask, especially with some of the homeless issues we still have out there. And as far as the emergency assistance funding, I'm open to that discussion too. Okay, next page.
Okay, so at the beginning of each budget season, we ask our departments to ask for those things that they believe would help their customers in the upcoming year. And we call those business plan initiatives. You have the business plan initiatives in front of you on those giant papers. And so as you can see, throughout the budget process, we received 145 requests for about $36 million. Of course, we won't be able to fund all of those. And so at the June meeting, we will meet with the county leadership team to prioritize those business plan initiatives to determine which will be funded. And of course, we would like your input as well as to which one of those business plan initiatives you believe should be funded. So for our constitutional officers, you can see the clerk, sheriff, and supervisor of elections, their budgets were due May 1st. Property appraiser will be due June 1st, and then the tax collector on August 1st. These are those that we have received to this point. The clerk and comptroller has requested 16 million. The sheriff is 149 million. And supervisor elections has requested 7 million. You'll notice the supervisor elections budget wanes and grows as the election season goes on. This next year in '24, there will be 2 elections. There'll be the presidential election in the spring, and then in August will be the primary for the local officials. So that's the reason for that increase there. And with that, we'd like to open it up for questions, discussion.
Any questions?
Are we gonna go through this at all, or
I
another
think it would,
time?
well, it's pretty detailed, and those are, like, the thing as Bob said, there was 145, and I will sit with the various department heads and team members to prioritize those. So those are in no particular order, but they represent a lot of the good ideas that our people have to better serve our citizens. But those come at a cost, both a one-time cost and a recurring cost, and so we have to look at them carefully in light of the numbers that we're looking at this year. But there may be things in there that you like, that you want to see, and I think it would be good if you probably took some time just to go through them.
Yeah, 'cause it's the first time I'm seeing these. And these are from our departments. Are these from the constitutionals as well, or?
No, ma'am, these
This
would be,
is
these
fine.
would be from our department heads. They've been vetted through the assistant county administrators and the budget office in terms of what the costs are, and what they would mean, and they're broken down by fund. And so some are split between funds, right? So one fund might be able to pay for part of it, another fund would be able to pay for another part of it. So we look at all that as we determine which ones to ultimately fund and not fund.
Commissioner Waitman.
Thank you, Chair. Is the money that the county has, are they in interest-bearing accounts? Every pot of money's in an
Yes, sir.
interest-bearing account? What are we getting on average?
I think, and I don't
I'm
know
sure
if
each pot's probably different
So
rate.
the court does our investment strategy.
Yes.
I know they do provide a financial presentation to the board a couple of times a year. I don't know if we're prepared to answer that or not in terms of what they have, but we can get back to you on what those numbers are.
And I think the last report that was shown, because for years we're making like 0%. We had trouble with the SBA, et cetera, but they're actually making money and they're transferring over some of the funds that were making like 1% up to 3%. So that last report, I think, would be very helpful to Commissioner Waitman, maybe for the rest of us to see it as well.
In the penny money, that's generating,
Yes, all idle funds are invested. Yes.
Yeah.
So as we go through the budget process, there's speculation of what the percentage increase was going to be from the property appraiser.
Yes, sir.
And you gave a range from 8 to 16. You're thinking it's going to come closer to 12, the latest information you've got?
It's, yeah, I mean, it's,
I
the
mean, we
property
don't-
appraiser speculates and, but he won't know formally until that. I can tell you that internally, we've kind of targeted 12% on some of our numbers in terms of looking at how to balance things within the general fund. That's been our target internally as a team here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Oakland?
Well, basically on the percentage, it's all a guess until you get that number. Once you get that number, that is the number. And then that's when you have to tighten down if the money's shorter than what you're planning. You have to tighten down on different funds and some of the money's be taken away. But if it's more than you think it is, then there's extra money in those departments. So we need to just make sure we're using that money to the right benefit for the citizens and take care of it, so.
And as we know, that with, especially the supervisor election, he's gonna have a bigger jump, small piece, but you got 2 elections, presidential. So
Well, and his goes up and.
His goes up,
Yeah.
and goes down, so.
Right.
Correct.
Based on elections, his changes from year to year, is how that works, so. All right.
Commissioner Wade?
A little bit further on the 211 funding. To piggyback on Commissioner Starkey's. Is that, what are we getting out of the 211? If they're wanting a 65,000 increase, and from what it sounds like, it may not.
25,000.
You know, if they're wanting 65 increase, we got that and we could put it towards.
United Way funding was 25.
Yeah, I think 211 is 25,000.
25,000, but if it's not doing what we want it to do.
Kathy, can you speak to 211, please?
Oops, I'm not sure if this,
You gotta hold it.
Not worth.
hold it? Okay. Kathy Pearson, Assistant County Administrator, Public Services. So United Way, the 211, they're asking to have a little bit of subsidy on that. I think the total cost for 211 is $90,000. They're asking the county, I think this year, to put in 25 of it. 211 is a company that is based out of Orlando. So they have been using this company for a few years. 211 is just a resource number. You call 211 if somebody's looking for a diabetic workshop or an Alzheimer's. That's the number they call, and people get connected to those resources. That's what the 211 is all about. So it's only as good as the information going in. And so I have tried it a couple of times. It has worked. I've tried it a couple of times. It hasn't worked. So it is based out of Orlando.
I haven't heard, Kathy? I haven't heard much about it as far as like citizens telling them they're using it. Have you studied it real close to see if it looks like an effective use, or is there a better way to get information on people?
So I have not gotten any reports except for the one that you forwarded to me the other day. Those are the first reports that I've seen. I would question on what kind of numbers, what's the number one call? Is it for rental income? Is it for, I don't know the breakdowns of that. So I think that's a better question for Chuck Anderson to answer from the United Way. So 211 is used in most counties. I know Hillsborough County uses a company in Hillsborough County. We just happen to choose to use one in Orlando.
Do we go out for bid on it, or how do we acquire the
This was
service?
before Chuck's time, so I don't know how that company was selected. They've been using it for years, so, but we can find out more details for you from Chuck.
I think it's worth looking into.
Okay.
Any other questions?
How do you want us to go through these and tell you what our priorities are? I mean, because,
So I think right now, really big picture, so we've presented to the board a baseline assumption and scenario, right? And the first assumption that we have given to you here is that the millage rates go back, you know, we're maintaining level millage, at least especially in the operating millage. Go back one more, thank you. You know, because your first act in July will be to set these millages on the trim. And so that's the big lever that you pull. And so when you look at the operating millage, you look at the fire MSTU millage, go ahead and go forward to the next slide. You can see what those will generate at those levels. This is the additional revenue based on the taxable assessed value. So we're essentially setting the additional revenue that will be available to the county to the constitutionals, to the various funds based on that. So I think initially, the first lever is, are you comfortable with the operating millage being where it's at? Are you comfortable with, we probably should talk fire MSTU here for just a couple of minutes, because the fire MSTU is a little unique in that your fire department is funded roughly 60% from the fire MSTU. We're just using round numbers, 60-40, general fund and fire MSTU. So an increase in the fire department will trigger an increase in the general fund. So if you go ahead to the next two slides. One more. So when you look at some of the priorities for fire rescue, you know, we are losing firefighters to neighboring counties. And so what we're negotiating right now is a wage increase. These numbers here would put us into about 95% of Hillsborough County, which is a target. But it would trigger, in order for us to accomplish that, because of the other inflationary pressures that you're seeing, go forward to the next one, in the fire fund, you can see that the fire MSTU fund, there's already a $7 million increase, and that's already accounting for current increased costs in fuel, personnel expenses, et cetera, et cetera. So, go back now. So, it will trigger an increase in the MSTU just to accomplish the wage increase of 0.0696 mils. But it also comes at an additional 1.3 million to the general fund, which was not baked into the original budget. So go back one more slide. These are the items that aren't baked into our initial stab at the budget. These are extra. If you go back one more. Yes, ma'am.
You said that the wage increase of IAFF,
That's the general fund component.
I thought you had that in the budget.
Go back one more. This slide is what we've already baked into the general fund department budgets. So this is baked into the budget that we've already put together and
Right there.
drafted and balanced at 12%. And you can see that's 19.2 million. You can see that we're still short.
So what is this mid-year raise?
So the fire union contract has a reopener clause in it. And so in order to keep pace with increases in firefighter wages and to be competitive, we had to we gave them a raise mid-year as part of their contract.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Robley?
So, I think you see that in Hillsborough, their taxes on homes and all
Yes, sir.
are higher, so they're able to fund more than we are, so we have to look at that, and our taxes in comparison are lower here
I don't know how we
in
can
the county.
compete. Yeah.
So it's hard to come up with that money to make up that 5%, but we need to stay as close as possible, or we end up losing our good firefighters that we have here in the county, so we want to make sure that we don't.
Well, I think the board can be very proud of the investments that it's made in other areas for our firefighters,
Yeah.
especially in terms of state-of-the-art fire stations. Our equipment is
Yeah.
very, very good. In fact, our gear change-out program, you've seen it in the fire stations, but we've also got decontamination units that are there that, you know, are proven to help reduce the risk of cancer to our firefighters and
I
carcinogenicity
don't believe
exposures.
our fire stations are second to none.
No, well, and even
Got all the plus that you can ask for in a fire station.
Yes, sir. And so I think the board can be proud of those investments because
Yeah.
they are, I think if you ask some of the old-time fire guys, that it's pretty solid stuff.
Yeah, and it's things based on safety and health of our firefighters, so we need to make sure we keep those kind of things coming into the county.
You know, from years ago when I first started, we didn't really look at the EMS portion as significant as it was. And we took a step to go, instead they went like a 2.5% raise at one point. We went up to 5%, and we got now, I think, probably the best trained fire protection unit, EMS protection unit in the nation. And I think we also listened to them when they said they wanted to be safer as well. And I think the provisions
Right.
we've done every step of the way to make it safer, so these guys can go out there, know they're gonna get treated, but even with the working conditions to improve every station, we put a lot of money into, to give them better conditions. And let's face it, with the growth of everything that's gone on, maybe we got caught behind with COVID getting some stuff done, but I think with the new stations coming on, as we keep on going to ribbon cutting every single time, And now working with emergency services to go, I think we've made a lot of good investments with it. So hopefully they'll look at that, and we keep on improving, that they'll look at not just wages, but they'll look at the working conditions and the fact that we are committed to helping
Right.
them serve our people better.
Yeah, I agree.
So we've got those millage, and the other priorities, if we just go to the other slide, sorry, one more. You know, these are, you know, those top two items, I personally believe we need to find a way to get those into the budget. Those are increases in retirement rates. Again, those are mandatory, so we'll have to find a way, but wage increases for our current employees in order to remain competitive, as well as that general fund portion for the firefighters. We have some opportunities with loans and things that I think we can make the jail expansion construction issues work. You know, we've got additional deputies for the sheriff. So again, as the budget continues to bake, these are things, but I would like a sense, so Commissioner, to answer your question, you know, do you share in these, you know, what are you thinking in terms of other things and priorities that you would like to see either added or deleted from this budget?
Commissioner Oakley?
Well, I was on the detention center, that extra money, that's to finish it?
Yes, sir. We're
Because
we're short of
based
construction
on the
dollars.
inflation and things of that
Inflation and-
nature?
Yep.
Right. So I definitely think we all know we need to do that, to finish that. So that's very important that we do that. Of course, wages are always important, so for our people to, I mean, it's just, too many people need affordable housing. We don't even have enough affordable housing for people. Probably 40% of all of our folks need affordable housing. We don't have that. So we need a plan to bring on some more affordable housing for workforce housing, for that 4% of our population that needs that. And we have a need, a lot of places have that same need. The prices of homes out in just the public, I've heard people talk about $300,000 homes as being affordable, but there's no way people worry about paying just a PVAS in some areas, can't afford a $300,000 home. So
Yes, sir.
it's something we need to really pay attention to and work it into our plans in the future to be helpful to our citizens here in Pasco. In District 1, I've just heard in the pipeline, we have 101,000 jobs coming to East Pasco County. Well, right now, we don't have the kind of housing that they're gonna need to live in. So we've gotta pay attention or get ahead of it, or we're probably already behind, but we don't wanna get further behind.
No, let's face it, with so many people coming to Florida, with Pasco growing, creating jobs, I mean, there's gonna be a struggle for a while on affordable housing.
Yeah, right.
So just picking the right ones and going with it. We still wanna get good quality stuff here too, so there's stuff to go. Commissioner Wade, you had your hand up?
Thank you, yeah. In terms of affordability in housing and properties, I know I'm probably in the minority here, but I'm more apt to support an MSTU than an increase generally in this budget. Just based on the pure, and I know everybody's impacted by inflation, but just based on everything that everybody's heard. Going through, I really hope you guys are very conservative in your increases and looking, if we can save a penny somewhere, I'd like to at least see the effort being done. Because folks are gonna be choosing now the increases at the grocery stores and everything a family has to go through to survive every week. And, you know, you're asking us to add increases to folks, and very sensitive to that.
Mr. Starkey, did you have your hand up too?
A couple of things. Well, I think that's well done, those priorities there. I'm not sure we can really go into the sheriff's budget yet.
Yeah,
since he's
I
not.
think it would be best if we see where the numbers land, ultimately, and then, you know, we can kind of take things from there.
So last year, we gave them a bump of money to support 40 deputies. And I don't recall, and I think I asked you to break that out, and I'm not sure I got it. If that was in addition to regular, or
So we,
Because we've kind of said we promised those 10 additional for a while, right?
yes, ma'am, that's what we did last year as well. We provided them money to hire 10 additional officers, and then the sheriff was going to hire additional officers within his regular budget.
Okay, because in going through the budget, it doesn't say what their ask covers. So I don't know
I
what
think he
part of
does
that
have
goes.
some increases
Maybe you
in,
guys have.
in deputies in there, but those did not include the additional 10 that the board
Right.
has
Yeah.
generally funded, you know, because typically we've split that. It became different, right, when the correction center became the counties. Then there was generally a reduction, I guess, in the percentage of the increase in taxable value that was given to the sheriff to support his budget. But then the previous administrator and board agreed to give him 10 additional deputies on top of that to ensure growth and,
Yeah,
you know,
gotta cover
and
growth.
security of law enforcement personnel out there, which I think is a good thing.
So I'll dive into that with him and with you guys more.
Yes.
Something that I think is really, really important is code enforcement. And we've just got to have that commercial team. And we have to, I don't know if you guys met with the code enforcement guys going around, but we also need to rethink our homeless camps and our code enforcement and sheriff team, whether that's a law enforcement officer is working with us specifically on homeless camps, but I think we're going to have to really have a special team that takes care of that.
I agree. Commissioner Oakley?
Yeah. Going on a little further with that, I think we need those extra code enforcement officers, and I think we need to use them in the proper way for homelessness and other areas. Mr. Steinschneider, with code enforcement and with certain code instances, I guess it's our ordinances, those hands are kind of tied sometimes about whether, you know, they may be under certain conditions to check on a property or whatever, but yet they're limited to not be able to go in that property, I guess because of an ordinance or law we have. So they can't verify the uses or how many people they have on a place.
I believe what you're referring to is they can't enter a property
Right.
based on the U.S. Constitution. That's where it derives from, is that basically that they have to be invited on, or they have to have a warrant, an administrative warrant to enter the property. And if it's a residence, it's much more difficult to get an administrative warrant. We can get administrative warrants for commercial property fairly easily as long as we can get time with the judge. But it's a higher burden if it's a residential property and it's a homesteaded residence. So basically, they have to be invited on, or they have to be able to observe it from the street or the curtilage of the home.
Right. That's the part that bothers me, that it kind of hinders them to be able to carry out the job because they can't really check. Say they had conditional use of 20 people and they're inside a building, then they can't check to verify if they're living by their conditional use or not. It's strange to me, with a conditional use, you wouldn't have the ability to get the same use to go in to check those numbers, so.
Yeah, that may be a little different. I mean, when you're talking about a special permit use or
Right.
conditional use, that they have gotten permission. But we'd have to review that with code on a site-by-site basis.
Right, okay, so, all right.
Generally, I gave you
Right.
that's what the norm is for, you know, that they can't go in to do minimum housing inspection without a warrant, without being invited,
Right.
with it, but.
That's kind of an issue that, I mean, with me, with code enforcement, I want them to do their job, but then they're kept from actually fulfilling their job because of some of these ordinances like that, where they can't enter our property. So that concerns me.
But that's not.
I know we need
That's
other,
not you tying their hands, that's
yeah,
the law of the
the
land.
law, right, I understand, right,
Tying their
yeah.
hands, yes.
And then the other thing about, the sheriff has his budget there, and it's he's figured a certain rate in there. Until we shouldn't go forward or even really dive into his budget very much until we know the real number. And when we know that real number, then yes, we should, ask probably for some more information. I'm sure hopefully he would give that to us, so, that we need, yeah.
I
That's
think
all.
that's information we can ask you up front to
Yeah,
see what's in
right.
the budget.
Exactly.
Thank you, Sheriff. Yeah. We're gonna increase, I think it's worth the conversation happening, if we're gonna increase 10 deputies, consider supporting the 10 additional deputies on top of what the sheriff has baked in his budget, I think we ought to have at least 1 or 2 designated specifically for code enforcement in partnership. Like there, I think if we go forward and give and takes on the budget, that we ought to have a dedicated person, partner at the sheriff's office to support our code folks somehow. Seemingly that we don't have that now, do we? We call for help and they may or may not send somebody, correct?
So you're referring, we're going back to the discussion of code
The head
officer
count.
safety and,
Yeah, but the head count in here, if we're gonna fund on top of 10 additional, on top of what the sheriff's budget is requesting on our portion, I think the county should say, hey, well, we need 1 or 2 designated sheriff's deputies to be ready to work hand in hand when our code folks need it. That way, we can react timely, right? And we're not, the expectation is there is not a maybe we'll have somebody. I think it's feasible to have at least 1. And then, switching gears back to the United Way funding. So the typical ask is what, 250,000 annually, and they're asking for another 65. So really the request this year is 315,000, right?
correct.
I'm not comfortable with the additional 65, and I'd be more willing to have that conversation if we can determine what we're getting out of that 25K for the 211. So I think we need to better understand what that money is. If that 25,000 isn't going as far as it could, maybe we reallocate that within the United Way budget, but the 65,000,
I don't think,
I'm not really seeing what.
yeah, I hear what you're saying there, Commissioner. We're not currently funding 211, is
No.
that correct? So they're currently funding, they're asking for us to pitch in.
So that would be an additional 25,000 on top
Yes,
of
sir.
the 65,000.
Yes.
That is
So
correct. Yeah,
66,
these,
that's a 90,000 ask.
yes, sir,
On top of the 250.
correct.
Yeah.
That's what they're asking for.
I'm a no.
I mean, we will, I think Kathy is committed to talking with
gonna
United. Oh,
She's
hey,
asking.
Kathy, go ahead.
So Commissioner, just to clarify, so the 60,000 would be a subsidy, I mean, the 20,000 would be a subsidy for or 25,000 for the subsidy for the United Way 211 call center. The 65 is an additional to the 250 that we give. Every year, they do spend 250, and it goes directly to the agencies. They don't take a penny of that. That goes directly to, they put out a proposal, they ask for proposals, and they have a committee, and they review them. It goes strictly back to any not-for-profits. Their needs are outweighing, I mean, they get more asks than they do money, so that's why they were requesting the extra 65,000.
The way that you have it broke down, it's a $90,000 ask. I think it's a bit, I mean, I've had to piecemeal the total increase, which I don't like.
I'm sorry, well, you're right, it's 154.5 down there, but we've got Pasco Kids First built into
Yeah.
that, so
That's on top of the
we'll make that
250.
clearer next
Yeah,
time.
so it's additional 90,000, what they're asking for this year. When you take the 25,000 plus the 65,
It's actually
No,
100.
it's actually 154,000.
Yeah, the total.
Total.
Pasco Kids First contract
Total of that.
increase is about 20 grand, so about 134,000
Can't see it there.
for United Way.
Jack?
Yeah, we should have subtotaled it.
Seth, when I first got here, the county, I think, maybe we only did it 1 year this way, maybe 2, and Jack, you'll remember, the county was the one giving the money to the charities. And it was, everyone was coming in asking us for money. And we decided it was better to give the money to United Way, and they would vet all the nonprofits and hand out money to nonprofits in the county. And so that's what that 250 is. It just took the pressure off of us. You know, and I think it was better. And we oversee, we can see how they give out the money, and he definitely should see that list of where they spent the money. And that number, 250, which goes straight to nonprofits in the county, has not been raised since I've been here. So I definitely think that number needs to bump up.
Well, with what they're asking for,
It's
they're asking for roughly,
the United
400,000.
Outside, well, I'm talking about this one, United Way Outside Agency Funding.
We've kind of put it out for you as a menu.
Yeah.
Of
So,
sorts, so.
You know, I would
mean, if there's some that
pop
you're more enamored with,
50,000 in there,
just let us know.
yeah.
Commissioner Wade.
Thank you. And I understand, I appreciate that, but when you go to wants and needs, the county doling out money to not-for-profits, philosophically, I'm looking at sidewalks, park slides, stormwater issues, raises for employees, that sort of thing. So I'd like to have some more in-depth understanding of this discretionary allocation.
Some of the services others may have around the country are probably more intense than we have here. And this was kind of like done just to help some of the agencies that really needed the help and support, and actually took the burden away from us instead of having government employees to take care of it.
Yeah. It's,
And again, Commissioner Stark, you're right on the money. When we took away the pressure for us to go do it, is for them to set it up. When you break it all down, going from 250 and adding 154, it's a huge jump. That's why I agree, we should really look closely at that 211 funding. The last one on there was for people, as you mentioned, you're gonna have some people now with just increases that have just come up with inflation, they just can't make bills. And you're gonna get some people that can't make the bills. Do they look at it? Yes. Will they make a decision if they allocate it? You could help some people instead of, where they get kicked to the street, whatever, they stay in their house.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing what they're doing. So I think with all these items, once we have the appraiser's numbers and we have the presentations, we can look at every single one of these and look down every which way through. I'm gonna recommend United Way meets with all of us to go specifically a little bit more, especially to the details we're asking. I think with staff, we got to look at it. There's even one item on here with this thing I'm seeing for the first time. I'm looking for deputy assistant at Sunwest Park and Parks and Trails
Yeah,
Division.
I saw that.
Is that something new we're doing now?
well, I have a
Which one are we
question
on?
on these.
Yes,
It says
I
deputy
think I
assistant.
highlighted it.
Deputy assistant for Sunwest Park and Parks and Trails Division. I mean, anytime we get a special event there, that event's paying for any extra assistance. But I don't understand why that's,
Well, let's, can I?
but again, we're gonna look at everything.
Yeah.
Commissioner Stark, go ahead.
So, in a more general sense, are any of these numbers in our budget already, or
So
all?
I'm gonna tell you that.
That's what's confusing to me.
Yeah, so let me just really lay it on the line here. Based on the numbers that I'm seeing, very few of these, at least on the general fund side, will get funded.
None of these are in the budget.
None of these are in the
None of
budget.
these things are in the budget.
Correct.
Well, they all seem important.
They are.
That's the really frustrating thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question on the Tourist Development Tax Fund. Why are we paying for naming rights? It seems like that should be money coming in, not money going out on 2113. Same with naming rights, Sarah Vandenberg Tennis Complex, $120,000 in the budget. Isn't that supposed to be a deposit, not a?
What would be to put the name of Pasco County or Florida Sports Coast on the tennis center? And the belief is that this would raise the profile of Pasco County.
Oh, we have to pay for,
Correct.
For our name to be put up
Yes.
there.
Because those aren't our facilities.
oh, but there's already a name on the Sarah Vandenberg Tennis Complex.
We put Pasco County, Florida Sports Coast on there.
It's an advertising and marketing.
So who picked that number? How'd that 120 come about?
That's probably what the cost of the naming rights are for the facility. Those are generally set by the venues.
Yes.
The Tourist Development Council looks at it, votes on it, decides whether they think it's worth the marketing effort. And if you want, Adam Thomas can do a presentation as far as what he does.
BPIs like that on funds that actually, aren't as constrained, so like the tourism fund, there is some flexibility in there. Those are BPIs that, we'll look at and can probably fund several of those and make those recommendations to you. The focus of today's presentation is typically on the most constrained fund, and that is your general revenue fund.
Yeah, they can,
Which.
oh, I see, this one says other funds?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so,
So the problem is until we get our number, we probably can't look at extra things.
But you
The
can
money may not
certainly
be
look
there.
at it and see what's important to you. And if you, and we can take that feedback as we structure, continue to bake the budget, if you will.
Right, okay.
there's just not enough, capital maintenance for parks. $5 million, but, and I support the parks very much, but I thought we funded that in the, with the GO bond. So,
Capital maintenance.
We did some of that, I think.
Yes. But it was,
I think the GO bond handled a lot of, it was deferred maintenance.
yes.
a
So
deferred maintenance.
Deferred
okay.
maintenance is just maintenance that we hadn't done, that we needed to do. And so there's an ongoing and a continual maintenance. Anytime we add parks, we even, as Mr. Breitenbach mentioned, facilities, making those investments, I call it renewal and replacement, operations and maintenance costs, they're there. They're real, but,
I just, looking at this list of what the park needs, it just shows you how underfunded our park department has been. And, these are, a ranger for Starkey Wilderness Park. Beach sand, grant specialists, I agree with that 100%. That's why I wanna talk about a parks MSTU when he comes up to us, we gotta talk about a very small parks MSTU. Because if we're bringing in 100,000 jobs and 100,000 more people or whatever, we already have a massive shortage of fields. And, I just got a very interesting text today about something that could come to Pasco County, and I don't know where they can come to.
You're right.
Okay, Commissioner Oakley.
Talking about parks, number one, it's very expensive, and the bond was for taking care of the
Backlog. Yeah.
deferred maintenance on those parks for many years before I got here. And that was a blessing that we had that bond, and the citizens voted that bond in to
That was the
take care
number
of that.
one. It had like 80% something.
Oh, yeah, it did real well for the citizens that support it. And to keep up with all the major parks that we got coming online, we're gonna have to have more money to take care of parks and have the fields we need, because our fields are being used up. And part of this item that, which really bothers me, is our citizens all pay in to the parks, and citizens moving in pay their impact fees and all. They pay all this to make these fields eligible to be played on by our residents. And then you have leagues of different kinds on different fields, and I've heard of one lately that their league is so big, they take up all these fields to play on, and this one particular league makes something like $2.2 million, the league, to allow their teams to play on our parks that the citizens pay for. Something's wrong with the system when they do all this paying. We have to keep asking citizens for more and more money to pay for these parks, that the fields have to be
Have to look at that.
maintained and redone. But somehow we've got to change that formula or change something. And Keith did tell me he had a plan, but
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing that plan, because it's just strange that somebody could make $2.2 million in there. All they do is kids play and they're very competitive, don't get me wrong.
And then the level of play that they get is phenomenal. So if the training's there and it's good for our kids and our parents want to spend their money privately to go do that, to support that going through it. But I think we've got a couple of opportunities coming up for long-term
But
health.
what I'm getting at is they don't pay for the maintenance on those fields that they make all this money on, that the citizens are having to continuously pay to have them maintained.
But still our kids playing there too.
I understand.
But I think we have some opportunities coming up. And I've talked to Keith Wiley for years about getting in the impact fees to come up. So the new growth comes in, helps pay for the fields. to get them up
10
to
years
shape.
late on that.
So,
Yeah.
but at least it's coming now, and I want to say, shout out for the Builders Association, from what I hear, they may be supporting it coming up. Now, one of the things that's in this budget that doesn't affect general revenue, it's all builder money, is right now we're over collecting in our permit fees. Hillsborough County years ago dropped theirs down like 40%. I think in our conversations coming up, as we start taking a look at that, do we bring those fees down to make it for businesses that are coming in or investing, that they don't have to pay as much for these fees to go through to do all the inspections. So there's an opportunity for a little trade-off there that can help us, I think, go the right way.
Well, if you take that money away from those fees and those areas that they're coming into, then you have to replace that money with, I guess, general fund money.
Well, I think it's a couple different things.
Let me clarify what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So there's right now park impact fees that's going to be coming before us.
Yes,
Right now, the Builders Association, from what I'm hearing, haven't got this confirmed.
I've heard the
they're gonna-
same thing.
Okay, so they're going to be supporting of it, but our permit fees that we charge, this goes a separate fund, has to be only for building services, et cetera.
Our 104.
104
what's
fund.
called the 104 fund can only be spent on the building department.
Right, yes.
What they take in and what they use for operation, that's what that money is, and it should be relatively equal.
Right, exactly.
And you don't want to have.
Is it not equal?
Right now, we've been saving money to go build the building, renovate the building. So a lot of the money went to that for the past, let's say, 2 years now. So with all that said, we're coming to the end of that now. We know where we're at. So now we can actually definitively say, okay, we're actually in position, we actually can bring these fees down.
Right.
And then,
I don't have a problem with that balancing out.
Exactly, and that's, yeah, we got to keep it balanced. So we have an opportunity there to actually help them as well. And I think it's coming up.
Yeah.
Commissioner Stark and then Commissioner Wade.
Great point on that, and I see in here that, I mean, can code compliance be covered by that? Because we have to go out and see if the businesses have kept their landscaping in that they were
That's not
supposed to.
building.
Huh?
That's not building, that's planning.
Well, we gotta move that over.
You can't just move them. So
I'm sure we can find a way.
I think I would listen to the county attorney.
Code inspectors that do minimum housing, that do building code compliance, yes, they can be funded
Okay,
out of
well,
104.
landscaping is part of the building code
No,
compliance.
landscaping is part of your land development code.
Yeah.
I'm saying, we just
Not
gotta change the
Florida-
wording.
Not the Florida.
You're not working with me here.
The
Okay.
Catholic says if they planted a garden on the roof.
Good luck.
Commissioner Wade.
No, no, I'm not done. So none of these in here in the planning can be under that as well?
Correct.
So,
So
wait,
planning
if
is-
we're looking at changing, going to a form-based code, say, which is easier for the building community, in some cases maybe, that can't be under,
Unless it's part of the state-adopted building code. And you can't say it's building. Now, we have done this
So
negotiation
you
for
have-
several years now.
You have
about
fees
what
that
we
you
can
charge
do.
as well for planning services and things like that. Those fees don't necessarily cover all costs. So, I mean, those are things that we can look at. I think in the broader context here, I understand what we're talking about, and we are looking at the building fees. So reductions and increases, balancing out cost, I think we can do that. As we make changes to planning, yeah, those are municipal services that are funded out of the 102 fund, so they're partly funded through user fees, but there is a gap, and that gap is made up by the general fund.
all right, and I forgot the other thing I was gonna say,
All right, Commissioner Wade.
but that didn't work out very well.
Commissioner Wade?
You sure?
I'm sure. You sure?
I'm gonna try and remember the other thing I wanted.
So when we're talking about fees, I really like to take a look and understand better the incentive plans that we give to business. I first came on and Commissioner Bradford came on, we signed up Gary Plastics. Good company to come in, creates jobs. But I thought to myself, this isn't a hit towards them, if we hadn't have incentivized them to come here, how likely would it be that they would still come to Pasco? Because we have real value now. And I'm of the age of stop giving away the farm. I mean, this data, when these folks come in and meet with us from all over the country that want to come to Pasco, is pinpointing our county. So I really like to start understanding these incentive packages and maybe start reeling those back a bit. That way we're not giving away so much. So that's just a general.
Yeah, we're judicious in the approach, and we work closely with Economic Growth, PEDC, on what it is. Believe me, the number of requests are long, but the number that are actually granted, we are thinking strategically about that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Oakley?
I know for a fact, under your office, Mike, with the economic development of different projects and things coming in, we do not have to and haven't incentivized some businesses, but they want to be here now. So it's a total different ballgame now than we used to have. We used to have to do more of that. We're having to do less now, to the fact of even doing none. And they're still wanting to come. So it's been worked out under Mike's office and done very well. So.
Commissioner Starkey?
Okay, I remember what I was gonna say.
Do you mind if I want to tag onto
Yeah,
this
go
topic
ahead,
here?
because mine is different.
Okay. So, with Economic Development Council, when I started long ago, we were a bedroom community. No jobs coming in.
Right.
And that was one of the things a lot of people wanted to focus on. That was my biggest thing, was to work with Economic Development Constituent Service. Stormwater happened as the hurricanes came in 2004. That was a bonus. But, I'm sure. Lived it well. So, looking at target industries that were coming in, and this is important even to EDC today, what they look at is they don't just look at a company coming in that's going to be retail or just bringing jobs in, or even low-paying jobs coming in. And the formulas they put in place, they look at the total number of jobs, they look at the money coming in, and where they want to go. Now, I'll say, when we were looking at doing our impact fees, mobility fees way back when, I think you'll remember my saying this, we had John Hagan in place. And John Hagan, we're talking about how much do we cut down these fees for these job creators coming in that are going to create a foundation. So do we cut them down 50%, 25%? Do we get it down to zero? And John and I, when we were going back and forth about it, and I said, John, how much better would it sound if we said there were zero transportation fees for anybody coming to create jobs? And that resonated. And not that the 25% mattered to the zero, but it was a lot easier to sell zero to coming in for transportation fees. And I think, the money we put out, our state legislators looked at it, and they kind of say, well, would they probably come to Florida anyway? Yeah, probably would. Would they come to Pasco? Maybe they would, if all things work. But does it send a great message that we want your business here? And I think that's been resonating over and over again. With Bill Cronin coming in, and now I think with EDC, working with TDC so closely together, we've got an image out there that we've created. And I hate to see us step away from that, because if that turns us back to say we don't want you anymore, it could be a more detriment. Will it be a final decision maker? Some say no, but I think the image it gives us is a really good one. Commissioner Oakley.
Well, just to tag on to what you're saying is, I was not talking about PEDC. I see a lot of numbers where they have a lot of contacts and all, but I don't see many results. I think it was only one on that form we saw not too long ago. But we're getting more in just coming in Pasco, and we're not having to give those incentives. And in some areas, we can't give those incentives because they don't meet the threshold as far as wages and things of that of their employees. They might be real low-paying jobs, so we don't incentivize for low-paying jobs. They have to meet a certain criteria to get incentivized for some of that. But
To carry on further.
it's a lot of stuff going in. And when you talk about a pipeline now, and they're not here yet, of 101,000 employees coming to East Pasco County, it is a big deal. And they're coming without being incentivized, so.
Coming without being incentivized.
Yep.
Well, and location land, I mean, I don't want to stay on the subject, Commissioner Stark, we'll get right to you. But I think it's still important that we go take a look. We had a recent manufacturer that left us and went to Plant City, and they weren't high-paying jobs.
Yeah.
Let them go, we let a bigger one come in, and, you know, that's the focus, the target industries, like the Moffett situation coming in. I mean, all those things are big, so, one of the things that we did with, a long time ago, is when the Opinicus came in, down by the Suncoast Parkway in 54, when they came in, the one thing they needed was a transportation access to get in. It was like $600,000. We went to the state, we got it.
That's true.
That was the incentive we came in.
Yeah.
So when we passed the penny for Pasco this year, one of the things I asked for, and you guys all heard me, is if we need to use it for transportation dollars for that, let's go do that. So when I get people at Shep at Shady Hills saying, look, we got all this commercial coming in, we got schools where they're driving out in the street, and we have our kids, they can't get back and forth to safety. That's why I presented, let's go look at the trail, let's look at using economic development money for the trail, because we know they're coming. You know, we just had one company come in for 100,000 or 100 acres of industrial land, now they want 3, and they'll people complain, well, what about the kids? They're gonna be driving by these big trucks where they gotta walk in the street, or walk in the dirt, so.
I just
I
want to
can
add
tell-
to what
tell-
you're saying,
Go
but
ahead.
Moffitt's a big deal, right? 16 million square foot of warehousing and buildings in the Moffitt Cure for Cancer Center over there, right? Big deal. At 52 and 75, we're going to have 21 million square feet of office and all by a lot of different businesses. One of them is Target Distribution right now, and other businesses coming in that road transition right there. Is 21 million square feet, bigger than Moffett. And Moffitt's a big deal. And a great deal for Pasco County, but we've got all these other businesses coming, just in that area, 21 million square feet of buildings and all, by different individual businesses from across the country coming here to Pasco County.
And you know, that business had probably looked at the location, it was all driven by location, where they're
Right.
gonna come in. With Moffett, as a target industry,
Yeah.
when they come in, all of a sudden, all the people, all the businesses that will support them are gonna come in for that.
They're coming around.
Distribution is distribution.
Yeah.
They're just looking at location. But this here is like when you start a core business like a target industry, you're gonna then get all the other business around it, and all the other goods that comes
Right.
with it. So I think they're a little bit
I
different.
agree, yeah.
I think all this I was just going to add, just to finalize it, it's okay, sir. You know, it underscores that we are, I think, as I said, you know, we look at these deals strategically. They're all custom deals. Every deal is different, and not every deal makes it to the board for approval. So I think you can be rest assured that we're thinking about these things, that we are looking at target industries, and that we know that, you know, we're looking for the sparks that are going to do exactly as you suggested, that are going to create more and bring that in. And that comes back to your earlier discussion of wanting to see how the commercial, industrial, and residential, who's really paying the bills. And that's where all this comes together to where you can see those results. I'll be happy to kind of pull that together to show you. But we're
He's leading
moving
me
that
right into
direction.
what I want to talk to y'all about.
And I'm just gonna touch one final point, because you actually brought up a really good point. Well, no,
I'm gonna revolt here in a second.
Hang on.
Throw that.
So with that said, like, we just had Santander that left. Now, we had an Economic Development Council meeting, we're in that same building, and we get a tour. We toured this whole building, while they're still there, haven't made the announcement that they're leaving.
Well, you just did.
There's nobody, well, there's no one there. I mean, the building's like, there's no people there.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's what we don't want. We want people to be working here, making money and going forward. Commissioner Starkey.
So, kind of touching on what Mike just said about seeing who brings what money into the coffers. I really do want to know what that value is for a home, a house, because I remember when it was 300,000, then it was 350,000, and especially for Commissioner Waitman being new on the board. There is a certain threshold of a value of a home where it takes from the general fund rather than puts money in through its property values.
Yeah.
And I believe we have to be very careful, not tipping over too greatly on the number of homes we build in the county that are under that threshold, because that will cost us a lot of money if we are only 40-foot wide homes with single-car garage and a door, which is what, Holiday was built on. Single-car garage and a door, 2 bedrooms and 1 bath. And it takes a lot of resources to work on, in that neighborhood. And so if we're not balancing that with
Yeah.
higher commercial and higher value residential, we're gonna sink ourselves. So somewhere there's a responsibility that we make sure we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
And you're right on. One of the old things we talked about years ago was executives want good places to live. They want quality places to live. So much as you're building those high-end homes, which I think at there's a certain point, and that point may be 400 grand right now, maybe 300 grand, I don't know. But wherever this is,
I'd like them
there's a
to find
break
out.
even.
We'll find out.
High-end?
I'm just saying, that's what the number used to be. So
Yeah,
wherever
it's
we're at
around $1
now.
million now, so.
No, I don't know, we're gonna,
don't
well,
know.
we just wanna make sure we.
I can tell you, big
we wanna
lots will
add
bring
to, not
more,
take
way
out.
more money.
Well, all right, so the higher the quality development we put in is gonna be better for our economic development people as well as taxes as well.
And I'm really looking forward to working on our new comp plan, because I believe we're making mistakes. And I'm not sure how much we can control, but, I was thinking the other day, here we have all those jobs with Moffett, with, what is it called, Sparrows? Sparrows, we really should call it that, because it's much more than Moffett. But we built a retirement community next door to it. I mean, that's the first development that went in as a retirement community. Do you realize that?
People that live there don't realize that Moffitt's there.
So, I mean, when you think about what we could have, if our land development code was right and our zoning was right, we could have had a downtown right there. When you consider all the jobs, and the high-end jobs, and everything that could spark with restaurants and hotels. But we didn't do that. We didn't allow for that. And I think that was a mistake. And so, therefore, our comp plan amendment is very important for us to make sure we're ensuring a good future for this county.
It's glad it's a budget item. That's been a long time coming as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts? Mike, you want to wrap it up?
Are you gonna prioritize these, or are we
Yes.
supposed to?
Nope. I
Because
will-
in the past, they were prioritized for us.
So, correct, and we do that exercise in June typically. We're starting a little earlier this year to try to get some initial input into the process, so you'll see what those final recommendations are in the budget. So, what I'm generally hearing in terms of the operating millage, we're gonna continue with that baseline assumption. We may look at a potential increase in the fire MSTU to perhaps look at some raises. The general landscape of the budget, United Way, I think we've gotten some input from you on that, and we'll continue to monitor and look at that. Again, we'll have conversations and dialogues with our constitutionals on that. We keep them, their partners. We'll stay engaged with that as well. And yes, short answer is I'll prioritize these. The more salient ones, of course, are the general fund ones, because there probably won't be a lot of money to fund a lot of those. But if there's anything that you would like more information on those, that's just a summary spreadsheet. We have complete detailed business analyses on all of them that show what each of those are about, how many personnel they come with, what they actually do, what the ROI is. That's part of the process. And that'll be part of the process as we go through to make the difficult decisions of which ones to prioritize over others. It's a very hard and unfun thing to do. Yeah, with that, I really have nothing else, Bob, unless you feel that there's something else that
No,
we need to add. So from our perspective, we're good.
Well, I think if you would have your staff with their projects, maybe kind of briefing each one of us at some
Absolutely.
point
Yeah.
as we go forward.
You
Like,
bet.
I met with Pat Aroten today, had a great conversation about it, that type of thing. One of the things you got on that seagrass agent, making sure the ROI to say, this is how much money's out there federally and state, we're not gonna get until we put the resiliency plan together.
Right.
So, all those things coupled are gonna be important for us. I think this is gonna be as hard a year. It's probably gonna go 7, 08 in the sense of, with expenses going up so high with inflation, and we're only getting a 3% ROI plus the growth, this is gonna be a tough year.
This is.
It's gonna be a very, very tough year, because you want to make sure you can pay your people, but now what else can you get done?
Correct.
So, Well, it's still got a lot of work to do.
Yep, team's up to the challenge, so thank you.
I think so. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy, what is mass feeding?